What went wrong when Toronto police investigated high-profile disappearances of several members of Toronto's LGBTQS2+ communities? A new landmark report released today concludes that there were serious flaws, systemic discrimination, and stereotypical ideas held by officers who were investigating the missing persons cases later connected to a serial killer. Tonight, the final report, what it says and what needs to be done next.
Many of the investigations I examined were seriously flawed. Those flaws reflected a range of systemic issues.
Toronto's Church and Wellesley Village, a safe haven for members of the LGBTQ2S+ community, a neighborhood traumatized by disappearances that later ended in tragedy. The 8 victims of a serial killer, men who Judge Gloria Epstein notes were either gay or bisexual, and all but 2 were of color.
The systems and practices that were in place discriminate against the LGBTQ2S+ communities and marginalized and vulnerable communities generally.
The failure to act comes at a price, Judge Epstein said, as questions were asked if these killings could have been prevented. Case by case, looking at police actions, finding red flags, a number of deficiencies, and leads that fell between the cracks.
There were a series of lost opportunities to apprehend and identify MacArthur. And so it's a significant finding on her part, and it goes to why we have to do so much better going forward.
2 more cases prompted this report, that of Alora Wells, a transgender woman who went missing and was later found dead, and Tess Ricci. It was her mother who traveled from out of town and found the 22-year-old's body at the bottom of a stairwell in the village. Judge Epstein found that overall systemic discrimination contributed to what went wrong here. Ultimately, police didn't give these cases the same attention they would to others.
Officers had some stereotypical notions about the LGBTQ2S+ community, and that affected the quality of, again, the inferences that they would draw from the work they were doing.
Toronto Police Service calling this a difficult report to read, a somber moment for the force, and calling the shortcomings inexcusable, promising the community to do better.
We acknowledge the mistakes made, the process failures, and the gaps. The service accepts responsibilities for these systemic issues, including not meeting provincial standards.
And to communities who have been hurt by this relationship,
just work with us, please. Give us an opportunity to make it right.
the report notes how police should improve tarnished relationships with members of the Church and Wellesley community, those marginalized and vulnerable. And among the 151 recommendations, centralizing missing persons cases that wouldn't be handled solely by police, but community organizations, including partnerships with public health units and social services.
Sometimes through a multidisciplinary approach that includes the police, and sometimes does not include the police. These investigations continue to be severely under-resourced, an issue that is deeply troubling, given the disproportionate number of marginalized and vulnerable people who go missing and who are exposed to risks while they are gone.
Interim Chief James Raymer says they will act on each one of the recommendations, putting in place bias training for officers and adding resources to its newly created Missing Persons Unit that will also consult communities.
We will double the number of investigators in the Missing Persons Unit from 4 to 8, as recommended by Justice Epstein. We will ensure that a missing persons coordinator is assigned to cover each division.
Now, this was quite the lengthy report. You can read it all along with the recommendations by taking your cell phone camera, pointing it to the code at the bottom of the screen. That will take you to our website, citynews.ca. Now, the authors of the report also say they're putting in place a number of transparent measures used to monitor how these recommendations will be put in place, also adding that they're confident that this report will not be collecting dust.